So, guys, like Alice, let's think about this virtual hospital models and AI integration. They're transforming healthcare delivery by extending this sort of clinical supervision is going directly into the home through continuous remote monitoring and predictive diagnostics. So, your background, Alice, in healthcare, you yourself was a speech and language therapist professional. I'm quite interested in this idea from your expertise. Biomarker tools, and they claim now to detect subtle signs of anxiety, depression, or cognitive decline by analysing speech, pitch, pauses, and rhythm and cadence. How can we algorithmically accurately distinguish between temporary vocal changes like fatigue or a cold and a genuine clinical shift?
So there's a lot of things going on here with this topic. So originally I sort of brought the topic of like the NHS want to set up an online trust, and that there's stuff about kind of that already virtual wards are operational. When it comes to sort of biomarkers, and I have a wearable health thing. I think Nathan does as well. I think he has a smartwatch. These are really common now. I actually did my master's dissertation in measuring voice pitch variability to see if it was about to see if you could capture any signs of autistic masking based on voice pitch variability. It's a very, very tricky and unstandardized field. We did find that you could detect significant differences between autistic people that were masking and autistic people that weren't, but that was with a lot of caveats. It's like it was a very intensive, laborious task. It's not unscientific, but it's a very sort of unexplored area. I feel like voice pitch, voice sort of prosody markers and stuff, as a metric for your sort of day-to-day well-being, not so sure. As compared with, stuff like your voice is a lot more determined by things like hormones and things like the size of your body, stuff like being a bit ill. I mean, obviously, when you get like a heavy cold or something, you do get voice changes. But I feel like by the time it reaches that stage, there's probably quite a lot of other things that can flag that somebody's unwell.
Are we heading for 2001 Space Odyssey, where actually you're seeing, people are just being left on their own, monitored by machines and with no human empathy? If you think of therapeutic processes, which often rely upon human empathy and subtle, like non-verbal cues, if you've got a machine that's just picking up on the verbal, the spoken, in psychology, they used to say communication was sort of something like 10% spoken and 90% everything else. If virtual hospitals begin like prioritizing automated screening tools, what nuances risk getting overlooked?
Well, there's a lot of controversy around, the idea of the NHS online trust. Virtual wards actually do exist already, and I've actually had a family member that was cared for in a virtual ward. My observation is that it's quite a successful model, virtual wards. But the reason that there's controversy, it's sort of all those things you pick up on of almost like we'll leave the machines to deal with it. Obviously, there's nothing at the moment as, I would say, intrusive as continual monitoring of people. It's more like, rather than accessing a GP where you live locally, you might be able to have access to a GP who lives miles and miles away, hundreds of miles away. But I think what's interesting is that the NHS idea for the online trust, they said they're prioritizing 9 conditions, and several of those are really interesting to me. There's like menopause, women's health generally, and iron deficiency. And there's a kind of a sense of, is this just an attempt to kind of cut down waiting lists by doing something, and almost like, should we just stick all the women's health issues, all the stuff that's going on, like with the maternity inquiry, let's just solve that by giving all the women to the online ward, to the online trust. But then there's a lot of other people who really advocate for sort of like, AI therapy, the use of AI in healthcare.
Yes, I mean, maybe this is because there is an underlying problem, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, Alice, that there just aren't any doctors or AI appointments anymore anyway. I mean, when I think my latest appointment, I had to do an application for, not really an appointment, I couldn't even book an appointment. I had to kind of talk about my health problem, and it was referred to what they call triage. And I can imagine, I can imagine elderly people would find that bewildering when they normally just ring up for an appointment for a doctor. So I'm wondering if we just really haven't got enough resources with medical healthcare, and AI is going to take over. My slight worry is that when you go to an airport and one conveyor belt breaks down, no one, it seems like 100 planes can't fly anymore. It just seems like, we get so dependent upon this sort of automation, or new passport control, where there's actually one import or customs officer monitoring 1,000 people, and then the passport machines stop working, and suddenly nobody can go on holiday for the whole day.
You can't speak to your doctor because the internet's gone down. It's just like, well...
Yeah. So, I mean, on the other side, sort of looking at the more tech-savvy, the more interested, you've got Google devices like Google Health Fitbit, which generate continuous streams of biometric data from heart rate variability to sleep stages. How do we turn that data into something that doctors and virtual ward teams could rely upon? And are you happy for your doctor to get to see that?
I personally don't have a problem with my health data being shared with health professionals.
That's because you're healthy.
Well, maybe, and maybe there's not too much, that I need to be worried of. But you hear about all these stories, and at Apple conferences, when they release the latest Apple Watch, they always have a segment where they talk about people's lives that have been saved as a result of wearing an Apple Watch on a daily basis, because it can track your heart rate rhythms and other different metrics, and it can prompt you that you may have a problem. You may want to go see your doctor because we've noticed changes in rhythms, in rates, and things like that. So I think there definitely is benefits to having some interaction there. And there has been well-documented cases where people have, preempted heart attacks and other heart conditions because they've had an Apple Watch on. I'm
interested. Yes, because there's sort of life-saving mode, isn't there? Which is obviously if your heart stops, and in our car we've got next to the automatic sunroof thing is an emergency button.
Yes.
And when I'm driving or concentrating, trying to do the sunroof, I can end up pressing calling this emergency rescue button. It reminds me of, I don't know if you remember with Homer Simpson, he was the president and he had a coffee machine button next to the launch nuclear attack button, and he would keep forgetting which one was which. I think if you think about it the other way, you're happy for your health monitoring data to go to a doctor. What about, I know somebody quite close who's had medical symptoms. They've sought medical care via private hospital. They've talked to the medical insurance telephone executives in the insurance company, and the insurance company has made retrospective diagnoses about their health. So they've acted as a healthcare professional. I've then talked to consultants in hospital who say you're getting insurance companies that are just with their own non-trained medical staff making inferences about your long-term health in the past from telephone information, and they haven't actually got any medical qualifications at all. They're just trying to avoid paying. So where does it start and where does it stop with your...
I mean, it's an interesting point. I mean, if you think about it begs the question, what resources do those people on the end of the telephone have to be able to, diagnose or, retrospectively give indication as to what things might be? Are they using some kind of chatbot? Do they have medical, how much medical history do they have in front of them? What other things do they have access to? I mean, I regularly chat to, my AI health thing as part of what I wear on my wrist, to help not necessarily diagnose, but give me the best workouts or, what I should be doing the following day based on my previous day's history. So from my point of view, on a personal level, I don't mind AI assisting me with, take a break today. Your heart rate was elevated last night, so maybe you should do this and do that. And that's things that I wouldn't be able to go to my doctor about because he just wouldn't care. But it's the small things that I feel can make a difference to the way that I behave and the way I react to my surroundings.
Just leapt out there, Alice. Go to my doctor about because he wouldn't care. We know somebody who's had a condition that they didn't know they had for over a decade and have found more empathy and understanding and more sort of encouragement to fight the system to get proper healthcare from Google Gemini than from a healthcare professional. What's your view on that?
There's two things in this discussion. There's sort of two strands. There is the UK NHS is broken. As a kind of, we're all just kind of sitting here like, yeah, it's terrible, it's broken. And I mean, having worked in it, even, a few years ago, before the state it's in now, I would agree. And then there's the sort of the idea of the ethics of like telehealth and AI health in particular. In 2025, I attended the Internet Governance Forum and heard a lady called Doris McGeary, who's a founder of something called KijiLink, and she was a survivor of very severe mental health difficulties and of feeling suicidal. And she was there, talking about the ethics of AI in health, and she was a strong advocate for AI therapy because and this even a year ago, AI, as we kind of use it as the public, was so different to how it is now. And she said that the chat interfaces of LLMs helped her survive basically a severe mental health crisis. But she was advocating for stronger regulation. And I think, for years we've had chatbots that have passed, like the bar exam and stuff. And I think I said it a year ago when this topic first came up, if chatbots are as competent and doing the work of healthcare professionals, we should probably hold them to the same kind of professional accreditation standards that we hold human healthcare practitioners to.
So what you're saying, what you're advocating for is that we take Anthropic Claude and it has to do the bloody exams.
Or it has to, if stuff goes wrong, it's held to the same standards. And I mean, you can see it already, even a few years ago, if you said to a chatbot, something like, I want to jump off a roof, can you help me? It would give you like, here are buildings near you, here's the highest one. And now it will give a very, very different response. It will signpost you to mental health professionals. So we can see already that, there's a sort of safety netting being built into chat bots, because the reality is that loads of people are using AI for therapy, loads of people are using AI for healthcare because, like we've said, we've got this kind of crisis, with healthcare practitioners doing their absolute best in a system that's just overwhelmed.
Is the ultimate arbiter of being held to the same standards human law? We were talking about this in agentic AI, where you can't punish an AI algorithm for selling your house when you didn't give it permission to. You can't send AI to jail if a healthcare professional, I've been watching the latest series of Beef, and there's a healthcare professional in there who inadvertently as one of his patients under cosmetic surgery. It's all very entertaining to watch, but people are now, they're sort of trying to avoid going to prison, whereas AI doesn't have that ultimate sort of sanction. And so when you're talking about holding them to account and sticking to professional standards, isn't it because ultimately the police will come knocking on the door if you go AWOL?
I think so. Well, I think the controversies are already out there with AI and with, the impact it's having on people, and with like these stories of kind of like people who end their lives by suicide, and it was AI's fault.
We've just to say we mentioned that very sad word twice. That will negate this broadcast in the live feed because of the algorithms, and actually we're talking with great concern about the drivers towards that. But we will, in the recap of that, edit those words out or put a beep, because you're not allowed, the automatic editing in YouTube won't allow that. So this topic will roll and roll. Frankly, I'm becoming addicted to AI. I know that they know that. It does feel like cigarettes, doesn't it, Nathan? We know that it's becoming such fun now. I'm almost checking out absolutely everything before I do any DIY or electrical construction or anything now I'm talking to.
Absolutely. And, we're going through the process of having an extension built on our house. And so I get technical documentation from Thames Water, from the builder, from the architect, and I'm sending them to chat and asking them can you tell me what this means in English? So that I can make some decisions and, figure out how to go forward and things. So, I use it for a lot of things to, help me just try and understand things I don't understand.
And I think it's a wonder, because it's like having, I went to very, very crappy state schools, and I don't think I got anything out of school. And from the age of 11, I didn't really go to school much at all anymore, but I loved self-learning. And this one, it's like having a teacher who you can say to all the time, I still don't quite understand that. Can you put it in another way, or could you put it in another way, or some drawings, and it will be endlessly patient and endlessly positive. It will.
And I've constructed a few harsh emails maybe to the architect and some of the people that I've been working with, and chat's kind of reined me in a bit and said, let's not get too confrontational, let's just be polite and just move forward calmly.
This will roll and roll. Thanks very much. It is time for our Tech Room 101.